Hey everyone, Chris here with another filler video. Today I felt instead of taking a look at a DOS game, we should take a look at a piece of DOS software that I actually still use quite a bit in terms of making my own games and stuff. And that program is DeluxePaint II Enhanced Edition, as you can see right here. The DeluxePaint series was actually made by Electronic Arts of all people, and they actually had a number of these programs, primarily for Amiga systems. In fact, DeluxePaint on Amiga computers goes all the way up to version 5, whereas here it only goes up to 2 Enhanced. And there was also the original 2 and the original DeluxePaint. I actually still have my original discs for the very first DeluxePaint program. And there's also something called DeluxePaint Animation, but I don't really know too much about it. Other than that, it doesn't quite have the same features as this program. But now, even though it looks like a typical paint program with all the functions at the side and menu options and everything, trust me, this thing is really powerful in comparison to Windows Paint or something like that. Not as powerful as like today's modern programs, but this thing still has its place, considering the kinds of things you can do, like instant feedback with whatever you're drawing out and such. So instead of just trying to explain all the program's features and everything, I think it's a good idea to show you a practical example of this program in use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with a conceptual screenshot, with basically my way of fleshing out an idea before I actually start drawing that out on paper and stuff. So I'm going to put one of those together for you, just something right out of the blue, just some idea I'm coming up with on the spot, and you guys can see how I go about doing it. So let's get started with that. So probably one of the most important things for any kind of game would be the player. So let's start with making a player. I don't know what kind of player we should make. Like, what kind of game should we even make here? I don't know, let's go for a 2D shooter just because of the fact that 2D shooters are simple. So let's first of all figure out what our coordinates are so we can size out our ship. Let's see, what would be a good size for the ship? Let's go 32 by 32. This seems good. And just make that dark color so that we can see what we're doing. Now I'm going to fast forward through any sections that are going to be boring and just me drawing stuff or whatever. So here we go with the first fast forward. Okay, I think that works well enough. One of the things I'm going to show you guys first that you can do with this program is that you can actually pick up pieces of your image and convert them into a sort of brush that you can draw with. Like now that I've picked up this part of the ship, I can just, draw with it like that. And you can even use all the other tools with it, like the line tool and everything. But what's more important about this is that you can actually convert the brush in certain ways, like rotating it around 90 degrees, mirroring it, flipping it, etc., etc. And this is a good way to actually get both sides of the ship like that. And then later, what I can do is the brush actually remembers its colors and everything. So like if I change the background color back to black and pick this up, now we have the whole thing, the gray and the white. And there's actually different brush modes that you can use. It's referred to as techniques here, which is where you can actually change how the brush works. Like if I put it into, say, smooth mode, then it actually smooths the image like that. But we don't want to do that. So I'm going to put some color to this ship, and then I'll be back. So there's our player ship. So now what we want to do is get this guy somewhere on the screen that makes sense. So I don't know, right down here near the bottom. Oops. There we go. Okay, so now what we should probably do is get ourselves some kind of map for the player to be on. So one thing that DeluxePaint does that makes this really easy to do is its grid system. Now the grid basically makes it so that all of your drawing operations lock to specific grid points. Now you can do some interesting things with this, but it's also important to note that DeluxePaint 2 normally locks onto the grid lines themselves. So like, I mean, this box right here, if we turn on the coordinates, is 25 by 25, yet the grid is set to 8 by 8. So what this means is that, you know, if we're doing something line related, it works nicely like that. But let's say we have that like that. We pick that up, it works nicely. But now let's say we wanted just this part, and we didn't want anything beyond that. So that would be 24 by 24. Let's say we didn't want this red part that I'm drawing in. But the problem is we pick up the red part and now we're overwriting it. So what we can do is there's a function in here called exclude edge. And this is basically a brush function that makes it so that when you're picking up a brush, it will avoid picking up the section beyond the grid, so to speak. So that way you're actually picking up the section you want. And that's how you would do basic tiling in here. So first of all, let's set our grid size. I think 16 by 16 grid should be good enough. And I'm just going to draw up some basic map tiles, and then I'll show you actually tiling them in. Now, one of the neat things DeluxePaint 2 actually does is you can take a brush like this, and then you can actually adjust the gradient spread of it. And what this basically means is that you can use this gradient system in combination with its multi-cycling to make sprites lighter or darker, as long as your palette is set up in a nice way to allow for that kind of cycling to go on. Because basically what multi-cycling does is it's altering all the pixels at once when I push the color cycling buttons, I should say. And this is what happens when you're recording things live like this. So anyways, let's see, what would be a good brightness? I think that's good enough. And should probably get that aligned on the grid. Now see, this is something that can happen if you pick up something without the grid active, is it doesn't align properly. So when that happens, what you need to do is just make yourself a point somewhere on the grid, pick up your brush without it, align the corner like that, and there you go. Cool. So now what we need to do is put some kind of a map or something together here. Oh, I'm just putting them anywhere right now. Or actually, one neat thing you can do is you don't even have to do it this way. What you can do is use the fill tool, set it to brush wrap. Oh, I forgot that's what it does when you hit it, brush wrap. Hang on. Trying to remember how to do this. Oh, right, that's right. You set it to pattern mode, and then you set your pattern as the actual brush. There we go. See, even me, someone who uses this program a ton, every so often I kind of forget how to do something like that, just because I don't do it that often. But yeah, so we've got our tiles on the side, which obviously should do something a little more dynamic than just, you know, walls like this. So maybe like have some wall of some kind branching out here. I don't know, maybe make like a sort of section here that the player can go through. Okay, that seems good enough. So now let's make these walls a little more dynamic. So let me do that, we'll get back. Now, one of the neat things you can do with this program is define stencils. Now, what a stencil basically is you're defining which sections of the image should not be changed by any of the drawing functions based on their color. So if we set a stencil up and say this color here, and invert the stencil to say that that's the only color that we can change, then when we use the spray tool here, we can actually spray inside this blue area without affecting all the areas around it. So that's a pretty neat thing you can do with that. Now what we're going to do here is take one of these tiles and repeat it as such, so that, well, that one didn't turn out so well. Oh well. It will work. Oh wait, we still have the stencil mode on. Yeah, I frequently forget to turn the stencils off and everything. Okay, there we go. Now it's working as expected. So there, now we have some edging tiles we can use. Okay, so we've got a ship, we've got our map. Now let's consider putting in some kind of enemies for our ship to shoot at. So let's see here. Let's just make some little like cannon fodder type enemies. So let's see. Okay, so now that we've got some enemies, we've got to make sure that they're all shooting at each other. So making shots for these enemies shouldn't be too big of a deal either. Like, I mean, the player, I don't know, let's give him player some deadly laser weapon of some kind. Now, one thing that might not be apparent, especially when you're making a conceptual screenshot like this, is that whenever you see a screenshot of a game, rarely are the player and the weapons aligned perfectly, because the player is always in motion. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making these kinds of pictures here. So let's say this weapon is grazing this guy right here. And then, yeah, 2 shots, that's fine. So now we got to make the enemy shots, and the enemies are just going to get, I don't know, some kind of really simple, like, I don't know. Let's just give them dots. Yeah, there you go. There's the enemy weapons. Little tiny pulses that can barely do anything. Actually, no, better idea. Let's give them dual pulses. Like that. There you go. Twice the minuscule amount of damage. And let's see. And that guy's not firing yet because he can't see the player. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so the enemies have some shots, the players have some shots. This guy's clearly getting hit, so we got to make sure it actually looks like he's getting hit. So let's do some little particle effects here. Yeah, it works. So we should probably consider the background next. Now the stencil feature helps for that, if we just want to put like a star field in the background or something. So let's get our spray tool out. Now what you can do is you can adjust the size of the spray tool so that it sprays all kinds of stuff, but obviously we don't want to do that. So let's make our stencil. We'll invert from the black color in the background. And it actually goes a lot slower when the stencil's active, just because it has to do so much more processing. But what we can also do is just do it in tiny amounts. And then slowly start to bring the color down using the color cycling keys. There. Now one thing I like to do too is set the brush type to this special one, because what it does is it's actually it's sort of like this sort of pattern like that, but what you can do is you can make it bigger, so you get lots of little lines like that, and then use the spray tool and just spray paint black to just sort of thin out the stars a bit. There you go. Now we should probably have some kind of status bar or score counter or something. So first of all, let's just save this. I'm in my vector zone directory right now. Now, ADG thing. Now, I didn't actually clear the image. It actually keeps two separate pages going, so you can switch between them easily. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some kind of a score counter. So this is where it gets a little interesting, because when you're making like a score counter or any kind of text, you kind of just have to have in the back of your mind like what your font is going to look like, sort of. Like, I mean, you can't really do like digital numbers sort of like this. I mean, that's what my first thought was just now, but that's going to make for some really big numbers on the screen, so that's not going to work. So let's just do something basic here. It works. Might want to do just like a solid black background there. In fact, I'm going to try that now. Let's see here. So one thing I can do, so I can do this black background more easily, is just set up the colors that I used here as my stencil colors. And we don't need that one. So that'll be the stencil colors. And then we just have to, well, go like this. Yeah, that probably works better. Now, as for the player themselves, like, I mean, what more should we add to this little picture here? We could probably have some kind of like weapon indicator, because clearly this is probably not going to be the default weapon. So weapon indicator of some kind would be good. So let's see here. Let's go back to our spare page. Let's make the weapon indicator as big as the player's ship. So that would be 32 by 32. So 32 by 32. Okay. And let's zoom in on that, and let's see what kind of colors we can put here. Okay, so we've got a score counter, we've got our power-up indicator, we've got our player ship, enemy ships, firing weapons. I don't know if we really need anything else beyond this. Like, I mean, I guess we could have a lives counter, but maybe it's a game where you don't have lives. Ooh, if it's a game where you don't have lives, you'd probably have a shields gauge then. Well, I think you guys get the basic gist of it anyways. You can do a lot of stuff with this program. Like, let me load up some of the stuff that I've done before, just to give you guys an example. Like, I mean, in terms of working on Vector Zone, I've got a lot of stuff here. Like, I mean, this was one of the original ideas behind the interface for Vector Zone when I still had the spinning camera involved and everything. Like, I mean, I was going to have the compass at the top. I was going to have energy gauges like this, or maybe like this. Like, I mean, I had multiple ideas that I had going on this page here. And then eventually it sort of evolved into something like this, because it was going to be like the ability to have equipment items and everything, and ammunition items. Yeah, the idea was a lot more complex when I first came up with it. And then for a time I was thinking, you know, maybe make it so that it had some kind of similarities to like Minecraft mods, but no, that didn't work out so well. And then there's interface things here too, because you need your interface for when you're doing your graphics and everything. This is not actually what the interface is going to look like. This was a couple revisions ago, but you know, it goes to show that I am working on this. Well, that picture's not even finished. Yeah, I even did the original title in here of, all right, the pages. Yeah, one of the odd things about the program is that you can't, if you've got both the spare page and the main page going at the same time, you can't actually change the size of the page because both pages have to match sizes. So it's kind of weird like that. There's other weird restrictions too, but you just sort of get used to them when you use this program so much. And here's another I thought of how the thing was going to look quite a number of revisions ago. But yeah, it goes to show you can do a lot with this program. Like, I mean, here's an example of something you could do if you were really weird. Like, I could take the shields gauge right here and put myself into perspective mode. And using the numeric keypad, yeah, you can actually do, yeah. You can do a lot of stuff with this program. You really can. Like, it's got font abilities, so you can, you know, type in font stuff. It has a few coloring features like anti-aliasing and colorizing stuff you draw. It even has a translucency thing. One of the weird things with translucency, though, is you have to change the translucency level from the fill type, which is kind of weird, but whatever. Actually, one feature that I really take advantage of is being able to do dot spacing with the lines. Because, like, I mean, let's say you have something like, I don't know, let's make a quick little box here. And pick up our little box. Now, if you were to draw a line with it, it would appear as a line like that. But if we were to say every, I don't know, 20 pixels, yeah, you can do stuff like that even. But what's really useful for this is end total dots. So if you want just 5 points on the line, it'll draw only 5 points. And what's useful with this is if you do it so it's every 3 points, and you just use a single pixel, what you can do is you can actually measure where the center point of something is just by going like that. Now that's a pretty neat thing you can do right there. And there's a symmetry tool, so you can do things symmetrically, sort of. It's kind of like those kaleidoscope type deals things. I don't know. Right now it's set to 6-point mirror. We could do, say, 11-point cyclic. There you go. But yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with this program. So that's basically all I got to show you guys. So that's, yeah. Live recording. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm getting better. So that's all for today's fillers. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys next time.